The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dave Clayman, CEO of 12 Points. Thanks for joining us here today for our January webinar. We will be getting started in just about 2 minutes. We have about half the attendees who signed up, so we give them just about 2 minutes to get signed in, and then we will get rolling. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. All right, just waiting for a few more folks. We're going to start exactly in 1 minute, so this is our 1 minute warning. All right, thank you everyone for your patience. Wanted to give an opportunity for everyone to get here. I'm Dave Clayman, CEO of 12 Points and one of the wealth advisors here. Very excited to bring you our January webinar, Preparing for Life Events, Things That Happen to You. We're actually having a great guest presenter today. Her name is Karen Drancic. She is a senior VP at Neuberger Berman, and she's going to walk us through some very informational slides about different life events and what you should do to prepare for them. Thanks for joining us, Karen.
I'm very glad to be here, Dave. Thanks. So are we ready to get off and get started?
We're going to get rolling. I guess I'll give my quick little, so there's my mug. We'll move along from that slide pretty quickly, but I am, as I mentioned, CEO and co-founder of 12 Points, and really happy to have you on here today with us.
Okay, so let's get to the main show, if you will. Thank you for having me again. I'm looking out the window at 8 inches of snow and hoping that when I walk outside, I'm not going to have an issue plowing the driveway. But today we're here to talk about some things that you might not necessarily associate with having some significant financial implications, if you will. They're what I like to refer to, most of them are happy events. That sometimes the financials come in a little second place, if you will. And we're going to talk about one event that's not necessarily a happy thing. But as I cover these 4 things, just bear in mind that this is all very general information. Your situation is going to be very specific to you. So take what works. You can have a conversation with your financial advisor after this is over if any of these have happened or are about to happen to you. I actually have a couple of them going on in my life, and I'll tell you what they are when we get there. I'm going to start off with the obvious. The one thing that most people, when they start thinking about life events, and it's what we're all working for anyway, is getting to that point where we don't have to work anymore, which is retirement. it has become much more daunting, if you will, to save for retirement. Definitely during my career, it's become more difficult. And some of the factors for that are, number one, we're living longer. Currently, the average lifespan for an American is 78.9 years. Now, it's different if you break it down by sex, and I'll go over that a little bit towards the end, but suffice it to say that women outlive their husbands by a significant number of years. The other big trend that has made it a little more difficult to save is that we as employees are becoming increasingly responsible for our own retirement assets and managing those. Gone the way of the dodo bird, if you will, are traditional pension plans or defined benefit plans, if you will. I am lucky enough to have two of them. I would have had a third, but I had one company that went bankrupt and the pension plan went right down the drain with it. So if we're not having, if we're living longer and we're having to manage it for ourselves, what are the other things that are kind of impacting us when we're doing this? I already talked about life expectancy is increasing. The one thing that that brings up is that we are actually living longer in retirement. Today, the average American spends about 20 years in retirement. I have a father-in-law who will turn 84 this year, and he retired at age 55. So he has essentially been retired for almost 30 years. Saving for that is a neat trick, if you will, and he's done a very good job at that. The other thing that's facing us is we have much fewer workers actually putting money into Social Security. Everybody's been declaring Social Security on life support for years. At some point, it probably will become unfeasible, which means that we're all going to have to take care of it ourselves. And taking care of it ourselves either means through IRAs or through defined contributions like 401k plans at our offices. And while we're doing all this and having this facing it, the problem with managing it ourselves is so few of us actually feel confident that we can do so in a competent manner. Only 23% of workers feel very confident in their ability to retire comfortably, and 21% of Americans have no retirement savings at all and have less than $5,000 in the bank. So this is a little bit foreboding. We're going to talk a little bit more about retirement as one of the life events that happens at number 3 or number 4 in this presentation. So just bear all this in the back of your mind, because while we're paying for everything else, we're also supposed to be paying for this. Like I said, retirement is just one of the pieces in the puzzle. The other common everyday life events that have implications to your financial life are listed here. It's getting married. And when I say getting married, it could be you yourself getting married, or it could be planning for a child to get married, having children, changing your job, whether it's willful or not. Again, preparing for retirement. And then I'm going to spend a little bit of time on estate planning, because the legalities of transferring this upon your demise are better off addressed sooner rather than later. And I don't care if you're 25 years old, there's some implications here for you as well. All right, so getting married. I'm actually dealing with this one right now. I have one son that's getting married in 2022. The average cost of a wedding today is almost $34,000. And I will also tell you that it is no longer just the burden of the bride's family to cover the cost of the wedding. It has become very fashionable and very trendy for both families to lump everything together, rehearsal, dinner, wedding, what have you, and split the cost, because they have become so expensive. And in some cases, the bride and groom are expected to chunk in a bit of their own funds as well. So this is probably only going to continue to get more expensive. So bear that in mind. Also, if you are the one who is getting married, these are some things that you should be talking about with your prospective spouse before you make the march down the aisle. Having a financial review and going over money and your attitudes about money before you get married is critical. The number one reason people get divorced today is over money. And things to bring to the table are your assets, a listing of your debts, going over your credit score is huge. Spending habits and who's going to control money and how are you going to pay for the bills, whether it's a joint savings account or a joint checking account, or are you going to split the bills in a unique way in your household? But this is really good information to go over. In addition, start talking now about what your lifelong goals are, whether it's, to buy or build your dream home, have children, the way that you want to retire, perhaps you want to go back to school, and using some sort of budgeting app, or if it's your own made up spreadsheet, having something actually written and that you can track will help you to stay on the right path towards achieving all of these goals. And the other thing to consider when you get married, and this happened to me, and it's no longer just happening to the women, by the way, there are some men who are changing their names. If you are changing your name, don't forget that you're going to need to change not only your driver's license and your social security card, but probably have to get new checks, new credit cards, change the names on some of your accounts, if you will, and update all of your beneficiary information. This one actually came back to haunt me a little bit. I didn't get married till I was 44 years old. And I didn't realize until my husband and I did our estate plan 4 years ago that I'd forgotten to change the beneficiary on one of my 401k plans. So don't forget to check in on the beneficiaries before and after you get married. All right, having a child. Not to say that they aren't worth it, but they are expensive. Today, on average, a couple can plan to spend in total about $233,000 to raise a child to the age of 17. And that's per child, and that does not include the cost of a college education. Families can expect to spend between $12,000 and almost $14,000 a year on average to raise that child. So, don't start thinking about, paying for it when you find out that you're going to have one. This is something you need to start planning for well in advance. And some additional things to consider while you're thinking about having children. Does your health insurance where you work, or if you're self-insured, adequately cover you, not only for the birth of your child, but taking that care of that child afterwards? What are the details, the deductibles, the co-payments, the policy limits? What's covered? Is it just, a regular birth, or does it cover emergencies, cesareans, advanced genetic testing? If your kid ends up in the NICU, does it cover that? So you're probably going to need to start looking at planning for some out-of-pocket expenses due to the pregnancy and the delivery. And then all of a sudden you start thinking to yourself, wow, I have a kid. It's not just about me anymore. And you start planning for the contingencies. What happens if I'm not here? Do I have enough life insurance to make sure that my child is going to grow up well cared for financially? And then if I'm not here, who's going to take care of my child? Is it going to be, parents, grandparents, family, friends? And these are some things that, you want to make sure that the people that you choose are going to be able to handle everything financially for that child. So having a kid is a little expensive, and then we get to saving for college. I had two that went through, and I can tell you the day that they graduated, it was like winning the lottery, because all of a sudden we had a lot of cash flow. If you had a baby in 2015, the projected 4-year average tuition and fees for students who enroll in 2033 will be $208,000 for a public university and $470,000 for a private college. Mine both went to school out of state. We live in Illinois, and I had one at Indiana and one at the University of Michigan, and they both pretty much cost $250,000 a piece to put through college. And that doesn't include some of their living expenses. So the name of the game here is you have to start saving before you even think about having a child. On average, you need to save over, let me back that up, $17,000, if you will. I want to go back, hold on. Why is this not working? I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulty. There we go. You would have to save $400 a month for 17 years, assuming 7% interest rate, to get to be able to pay for that public university. And if you want your kid to go to a private school, you're going to have to double that amount. One of the best ways to do this, if you haven't heard of it, and I highly encourage this, is to consider opening a 529 plan. Like I said, even before you think about having children, just because the more time you have to save, the less you literally have to put in on a monthly basis. So it's expensive. The next life event that happens to us, sometimes it's willfully and sometimes not, is changing our careers, if you will. If you are in this boat, whether it is willfully or not, and if you are looking at another job, it's not just an apples to apples comparison about income. Certainly there's a lot more to it. There are other things in the package that you need to compare, like, your retirement accounts. Will you have access to a 401k plan or other type of qualified savings plan? Does the company match any of that money? Is the insurance that you'd be getting, adequate coverage, and is it measurable or comparable to what it is that you have now? And are there other perks like stock options and, other employer-sponsored programs that you'd be able to get access to at that new place of employment? I will say that one of the best ways to compare everything is to take the prospective packages and bring them to your financial advisor. They're very good at taking a look at packages and making sure that it's actually a good change to make. One of the statistics that I find really interesting, and I'm seeing this more and more, is that the number of years that people work for an institution have steadily gone down. It used to be in my parents' generation that you went to work for one company and you stayed there for your entire career. They literally took care of you from start to finish. Today, most of the time, you're only at a firm for a few years. 4.2 years is the median number of years that waged and salary workers had been with their current employer. And the reason that people leave typically is because they're looking for advancement or they're looking for greater salaries. And that they feel that's the only way to get it. Other things to consider when you're looking to change your job. You're going to have to, if you anticipate being out of work for a period of time, you're going to readjust your budget. If you're looking at a job that potentially pays you less, certainly you're going to have to budget. If you're looking at even a short-term disability, you're probably going to have to reassess your budget. Employee-sponsored benefits, I already talked about this. It's health insurance and life insurance, making sure that they're comparable not only in price but in coverage. And if you are in a position where you're going to have to take unemployment, right now, and I don't have current COVID information, you're probably going to be eligible for about 26 weeks of regular unemployment benefits. COVID, I think, has extended that quite a bit more, and up to 67 weeks of additional benefits through an emergency act. I will tell you, keep very adequate records while you're on unemployment of your job seeking activities. Happened to me once in my career and I did get audited, and thank God I had the paperwork to back it up. So being out of work is still a job because you're having to look for a job and keep good records. All right, while you're out of work, you're not contributing to Social Security, so that's going to affect your payout. If you are an older worker and out of work and you are contemplating starting to draw your Social Security, again, this is something that you probably want to take to a financial expert to figure out whether it's good to do so or not. And lastly, I'll cover, if you are a dreamer and you've always wanted to open your own business and you are considering saving, or excuse me, taking some of your retirement savings to put into this new business, I would caution you, because as many as 50% of all new businesses fail within the first 5 years. And that's even, that's COVID notwithstanding. A global pandemic has certainly put quite a few businesses out in the past year. And this statistic doesn't even cover anything like a global pandemic. So it's a risky enterprise. And I think the last place you really want to be looking is your retirement savings to put into it. Okay, this is the biggie. Retirement is the big life event that all of us have kind of at the goal line to save for. It typically takes us a long time to save. Let's see, the average amount of years that an American spends in retirement, like I said, is about 20. For some people, if they've saved well enough and they've earned very well, it could be 30 years or more, depending on how long you live. How do you start off? I tell anyone first starting out in their careers that the first thing that you need to do is pay yourself. And most of us should do that through either a 401k plan, particularly if there's a matching component to it, or some sort of qualified savings plan via an IRA, but pay yourself first. This year, 401k plan holders can contribute up to $26,000 annually starting at age 50. That's because there's a makeup provision. Let's see, if you are thinking about retiring, and you have a 401k plan, you probably want to consider your options about whether or not to take it in a lump sum, or if you want to take it and roll it over. Rolling it over basically means you'll be taking that money and opening an IRA with a financial advisor, rather than leaving the money at your place of employment. And then start to consider what your expected annual withdrawals will be when you retire. And don't forget to take those, because there are big penalties if you don't. All right, other factors to consider. While you're still working, start thinking about how do you want to spend your time in retirement. This is also can be pretty stressful amongst couples and families about what they want to do when they're retired. Do you want to really slow down, or do you want to take a volunteer position and continue to actually be active and useful? Do you want to travel? Do you want to paint, or do sculpture, or have a hobby that you get really interested in? Are you thinking about selling your home and downsizing, as most people do? Will you be relocating? All of these have tremendous financial implications to your retirement savings. The one thing that I encourage everybody to do, and my husband and I do this, once a year we sit down with all of our retirement assets and go over what we've got. And it's really funny, but we do this, and every year he always forgets that I have 2 pension plans. And when I bring that amount to the table, he's like, oh my God, I totally forgot that we had that. That's like found money. So this is just an annual reminder of everything that you've got and how big the pile is going to be when you get there. The other thing to do is to start thinking about your insurance coverage and whether or not your spouse is going to be included in that when you retire. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And if you don't, then you're probably going to have to pay out of pocket for coverage for a spouse. All right, now here is my big passion. We're talking about estate planning. I will tell everyone, regardless of how old you are, you have a vested interest in putting together an estate plan, because if you don't, the state where you live will determine one for you, and you might not like the way your state divvies everything up upon your demise. Couple of statistics to consider here. 70% of all married boomer women will actually outlive their husbands. That's probably a big shock to some of the men on the call. And 80 to 90% of all women at some point in time will be solely responsible for their own and their family's finances. A lot of older women, my mother's generation, had deferred responsibility for managing the family's retirement assets. So It could be a real eye-opener, and it could leave them scrambling for information and knowledge. So be aware of the fact that, especially you gals, that at some point it's going to be up to you. The components of your estate plan, and to get one of these, you will need to see an estate planning attorney. I have some people ask me, well, can I do my own will? Certainly you can. There are some places on the internet where you can do your own will, but I will tell you, it's always better to go to a professional because they know all of the information that needs to be captured. And they're probably going to become a lot more attuned to your own individual circumstances and how you need to prepare, not just generically like you'll find on the internet. Like I said, you need to have at a bare minimum a will, and this is going to tell everybody everything that you've got and who's going to get it when you're gone and when they're going to get it. I will tell you that most people think that their will is the most important document they create as part of their estate plan, but 90% of the attorneys that I work with will tell you that a durable power of attorney is the most important document. And that's because this is what will protect you in the event of an incapacity, whether it is a mental incapacity like dementia or Alzheimer's, or whether it's just a limited physical incapacity where you can no longer manage your legal and financial affairs. If you don't have a power of attorney designated before this happens to you, the law says you no longer have the capacity to do it after the fact. And it will subject you to something called a conservatorship or a guardianship proceeding. And you want to avoid that like the plague. It is messy, it is expensive, and it's public knowledge. Especially in the event of dementia, anyone could go to the courthouse and try and figure out how cuckoo you are. So, if you value your privacy and you want to keep things neat and clean and inexpensive, one of the cheapest ways that you can get insurance for that is to have a durable power of attorney executed. Lastly, you should also name someone your healthcare proxy so that in the event that you no longer have the capacity to make these decisions, someone will be able to make medical decisions for you. I will also tell you that you should have a conversation with whomever you are designating to make sure that they are going to be willing to do whatever it is that you want towards the end of your life. The last thing you want is to get someone who won't be able to, quote unquote, pull the plug, even though it's something that you might have wanted. So make sure that you choose the right person there. All right, lastly, a few other considerations that are out there. My sister actually just referenced this term. My mother passed away in October, and she had been taking care of my mom for quite a bit, and at the same time, she had 3 kids under the age of 17. The sandwich generation is those of us who are still working and taking care of our kids at home while we're also taking care of our adult parents. Whether that means that they've moved into your home with you or whether you find yourself having to supplement their income to cover a nursing home or a retirement home. A third of us in our 40s and 50s are actually considered part of this generation. And it provides some unique challenges in saving for your own retirement. So if you are in this situation, you need to bring this to the attention of your financial advisor. Another recent trend, and I love this, are health savings accounts, or HSAs. These are projected to be the next quote unquote 401k. They're funded with pre-tax dollars and they never expire. So unlike your healthcare spending accounts, these are savings accounts. And you're basically not allowed to get them until you retire. And the funds are, taken out and they're not taxed currently, and they will be when you pull them out later in your life. They are gaining traction in the workplace, primarily with the millennials. 20% of their salaries or more going into the HSAs, more than any other generations. And this market is expected to approach $88 billion and over 30 million accounts by this year. So that's something else to be thinking about putting a little money aside for. Lastly, this is probably something that you've all read. And what we're talking about here are rainy day funds and emergency funds. Rainy day fund is that $1,000 to $5,000 that whether you have it in a savings account or you have a separate checking account set aside for things like, car repairs, household repairs, medical deductibles, dental bills that, try going into a dentist and getting a crown today. It's pretty expensive, and dental insurance only goes so far. So that's what a rainy day fund is. An emergency fund, however, is several months of your current salary to have as quote unquote a nest egg in the event that you lose your job. Or something happens where you're not going to be able to be working. Maybe it's a short-term disability, but emergency fund is larger, and it's meant to cover all of your expenses on a monthly basis. So don't forget to put these little things aside while you're thinking about retirement as well. I'll leave you with this last thought. You're not going to have to do this all yourself. Having a team of professionals to help you with this will make all the difference in the world. First and foremost, your financial advisor, an accountant, not just a tax preparer. A good accountant will actually tell you some of the more tax advantaged ways to save. An estate planning attorney, certainly to put together your estate plan. And while you're younger, a banker, should you need lending funds especially, it's good to have a personal or private banker on your team, and having an insurance specialist. If your financial advisor doesn't do insurance as well, having an insurance specialist is also a good member of the team to have lifelong. I think that's going to bring me to the end. And yes, David, I'm going to turn it back over to you and see if we have any questions or if you want to wrap us up.
Thanks. We do have a couple of questions. Thanks for getting us through all that information. That was very valuable stuff. So the questions we've got, and I can field this or you can, but what are the best ways to grow your savings for a wedding, kids, college, etc.?
You're the expert. I'm going to leave that one up to you.
All right, I'll take that one. So certainly for college, it would be those 529 plans that Karen mentioned, the ability to save in a tax-deferred manner and have that money grow without having to pay taxes on a regular basis. Can also look at custodial accounts as another option. That's typically a different animal, and pros and cons to both, depending on taxation and ownership of the asset. So a couple different ways to do it, but 529s really have superseded the custodial account. Best way to save for a wedding or kids, it's really to just be packing it away. Often it's to set up a separate account that you don't touch. So my business partner, Francesca, refers to it as forced savings. So put the money in an automatic transfer to a separate account. So that you don't have to do it manually, because we all know, even me, when I get my hot little hands on some money, I could, well, except for in COVID world, I can find something fun to do with it. So being able to set that money aside in a separate account that gets an automatic transfer from your probable direct deposit from work is a good way to do that. So same thing for both wedding and kids, really there. What free apps do we suggest for people to budget? Well, if you're a participant in one of our retirement plans, you can utilize the portal that we are bringing to your companies right now. It is a free benefit through your retirement plan, so that's a good way to go. Has a budgeting app, has aggregation, so a lot of different ways to look at things. I'm not a college sports guy, so I can't answer the Go Hoosiers comment, but I'll just let that sit. And,
that goes to my one son that went to Indiana. That was actually very interesting, because I went to the University of North Carolina, so we always had fun during basketball season.
There you go. So yeah, college sports not such a big thing here in the Northeast. And then lastly, can we get a recording? Absolutely. There will be a link sent out after the webinar. Thank you for attendance. And if you'd like to watch the recording, you can either ask one of us really the best place to get it is to send an email to Greg on my team, greg@12points.com, and the 12 is spelled out just like my email there on the screen. Or you can go to our website, 12pointswealth.com/webinars, and that will have a list of all of our past webinars as well as this one. So with that, Karen, I will thank you for the great presentation. I will thank everyone for their time. We're running about 5 minutes over, so I do apologize for that, but hopefully it was with good information. So thank you all. Looking forward to having you. A lot of changes in legislation going on, as we know. So our February webinar is going to be regarding changes in legislation that could be coming that affect your retirement plan. So we hope you will tune in for that as well. Thanks, everyone, and thank you, Karen.
My pleasure.
Great. Everyone have a great month. Take care. Bye-bye.